2, 3, 4.
We get live right now, man. It's going down. Excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Dear Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast brought to you by us here, the staff at Brew Hoop. I am one of your main hosts, Jackson Gross, joined alongside not only by our managing editor, Van Baez, but by the legendary, I'm going to say it twice, Jim Paschke. Thank you so much for hopping on with us for our season series preview.
Well, it's great to be with both of you. Thank you, Jackson, Van. I just was mentioning that I'm so far removed from the team these days, I feel a little bit odd, but let's give it a run and see what we think about this year's team.
Yeah, there's going to be plenty to talk about with, again, another year of massive moves during the off season. But we'll go ahead and get started with our first question. We already knew two, and Doc Rivers being Doc Rivers, he let slip his third starter with KPJ probably starting at point guard. But who do you think is going to be the starting, or pick your starting lineup on opening night, and who would you want in the closing lineup for a playoff game?
Great question. I think, most people have Giannis, of course, and Turner in the starting lineup. And then I suppose Kuzma would be in there, KPJ, and probably Gary Trent Jr. Now, I've been thinking a little bit about this. Cole Anthony is interesting to me. He might not be the starter on opening night, but if he plays the way he can at a position where the Bucks have a weakness, in my opinion, that could change things at the point position. We can talk more about that. Another guy that I spent some time with recently and had a chance to meet for the first time, I talked to him for about an hour, AJ Green, has something up his sleeve this year. I'm not sure what it is, but I see kind of a breakthrough situation for him. He could make himself valuable in a different way that might put him in the starting lineup. I don't know about on opening night. I think they have great versatility. So, I think there'll be a lot of different starting lineups, to be quite frank with you. So that's tricky for me. And then you have the Kuzma situation. Why can't Bobby Portis be a starter? You could make a switch there if you want consistency, and how he would play with Giannis and Turner could open something there, in my opinion. I can't predict that. Of course, Taurean Prince is in that mix, but I guess I'll go with the consensus starting five for now, but with the caveats that some people could turn that around and make it a surprise. Late in the season, a playoff game, way too far out for me to have conjecture on that. That depends on so many things, but I think maybe I covered some of the possibilities in my overall description here. But those are my thoughts as I look at the roster. And, I never think for coaches. I don't have that kind of brain. I don't have that kind of experience. But if we're spitballing here, those are my thoughts going into the season.
Yeah, it's interesting. You brought up Cole Anthony, who I want to talk about, but also Portis, like a real jumbo lineup where Giannis is maybe, playing more of like the small forward role he had a little bit of experience with earlier in his career. But with Anthony, he was an interesting signing to me because, they needed a more ball handling, I thought. And he has some of those real point guard skills that you look for, especially like at someone off the bench who can run the second unit. But since I don't know how much of a chance we'll necessarily get to talk about Anthony, it occurred to me to ask you, since, at Media Day, we were talking a little bit about how, he's back in a city where his dad played. And looking back, I realized it was actually only like 24 games or so. But what memories do you have of Greg Anthony in Milwaukee, or just any time you encounter him in your career?
Very intelligent human being. He understands the game. Obviously, he's done well as a broadcaster and a commentator on the league. So, I mean, it was a small sample, but he knew what he was doing. And that's part of my thinking. I mean, there's there's DNA at work there with Cole Anthony, and we'll see. I mean, I touched on it. I think if I had to pick a weakness in this team on paper prior to the season, it has to be at the point guard position. And, sometimes when you have three, you don't have any. We'll see. I hope somebody rises up because they need that. Now, let's talk about how that plays. If Giannis is going to play the way he did last season when Lillard was unavailable, if he's going to have the ball in his hands and be a de facto point guard, that changes a lot of things. Now your point guards have to be secondary playmakers. They have to understand how to play off the balls. There's so many factors here that, it's hard to predict. We have to see how Doc Rivers allows Giannis to control the play and how that works. We can get into the turnover problems and all of that. One of the things that I've been thinking about that I haven't heard anybody talk about is a Giannis Turner pick and roll. Now, on the surface, that seems amazing to me. Turner can drop, Turner can pop, he can hit the threes. But is Giannis the kind of ball handler at his size? Is he a good ball handler, a good enough ball handler in the pick and roll to make that work well? He has a high dribble because of his height. That's open for theft in that close encounter situation with two big guys. But think about if he were able to handle in that situation what that could be. I think that would be, very difficult to defend. So there's all of that going on in terms of how they mix up ball handling, how they use the pick and roll with Giannis and Turner, if they do. And so these guards are going to have to be very nimble mentally to understand what could be shifting roles from the game one all the way through the season, in my opinion. That's what I think might happen. So it's very developmental in my mind at that position. We'll see.
Quick question about that. If they were running a Giannis, I mean, I don't want to say like if you were the coach, but if in general, like you saw a Giannis and Turner pick and roll, where would you set that? Would it be would you put it out high, like so Giannis has more of a runway, or would you kind of run it in the shorter roll?
Well, I think you can do all of that. I mean, to me, the biggest thing is, can Giannis handle the ball in that situation without turning it over?
Yeah.
And make that work. And then, if they can do that, now you can play that anywhere. You can start at the elbow. You can start higher. You can do all kinds of things depending on the matchups, depending on the situation within the game. You can play around with that. It could be unbelievable in my mind, potentially. But there are some things that have to be overcome, I suspect, before we can fully understand that. But I'm going to be watching that very closely and see if they use it, how they use it, and how effective it might be.
Yeah, interesting to think about the possibilities with Turner, just because he's, as a screener, at least on paper, one of the best in the league. And of course, Brook Lopez was such a great screener. But as I know we've talked about on this podcast and other places, the Turner Halliburton pick and roll in Indiana was, by terms of points per possession, the best, roller and ball handler combination in the league last year.
Outstanding. And you bring up a great point that just occurred to me. Which of the point guards are going to be best at that?
Yeah.
That may determine your starter. That may determine your minutes. Which of those point guards can run that pick and roll most effectively with Turner if Giannis doesn't do it all that often. But think of the mix they have there. If you get somebody, a conventional or more conventional point guard who can run it well with Turner, and then you throw Giannis in there on occasion when you can maybe live with a turnover, could be unbelievable to me.
Ooh, I've actually something I've considered just thinking about it, the Giannis and Myles like pick and roll schematically. Like especially if you do it at like the top of the key or something, you have so many opportunities, not only for a driving lane for Giannis, but there's no rim protector at that point. You got the 4 and the 5 basically out on the perimeter, and that's going to open up so many backdoor cuts and just a ton of different creative off-ball motion. I've been thinking about that a little bit too, and I'm like, I really like the idea of this.
Yeah, well, great point. Now, one of the biggest things for this team is, can they hit shots uh, often enough and at a frequency that allows Giannis to handle the ball and kick it out? He's a great passer. But think about this. If they run that high pick and roll with Giannis and Turner, and you have the floor spread and you hit shots, you're going to get open looks, and there are going to be rebounds that the big man is going to struggle to get. Now you need rebounding guards, and Cole Anthony is a pretty good rebounding guard. Gary Trent is okay. He's pretty good too at rebounding. So those are all little intricacies that I'll be watching and see how it plays out, because to me it's fascinating. It could be really interesting to watch the development of that sort of thing with this team.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see how all that turns out, because like you said, there's so many different little things to look into it.
I didn't realize, Jim, you're right about Cole Anthony. You look at his per 36 numbers, his entire career, over 6 rebounds per 36 minutes. And
very good.
This was a guy who, until last year, he was. He's always played over 1,200 minutes in his career, so it's not like this is a small sample size guy. The last year he was at 18.4 minutes a game, but previously like 22, 25, 27, 30. Yeah, a pretty strong guard rebounder, and 5.4 per game in his one full season as a starter. That's pretty incredible for a guy who's my size, 6'2", 185. Like, that's me.
And long shots, long rebounds. If you move that pick and roll high, then you just get underneath that pick and roll, and those rebounds are going to be at the 15-foot mark. They're going to be at the free throw line level, and the guards can get in there and snare a lot of rebounds. Something else to watch for, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm rolling this around, and who knows what will happen, but it's interesting to think about possibilities.
Yeah, totally.
All right. Speaking of Myles Turner, we talked a lot about it already, but just even like outside of just the offensive side of the part of it, how do you think he kind of fits in, and like his playing style is going to be with the Bucks, and how are the other guys going to fit around him?
Well, that's a great question. I guess my first thought is it's probably up to him to figure out how to fit into this team, as opposed, it goes both ways, but there's an alpha dog here, and it's been interesting to watch different players work with that alpha dog, and Myles is no different. He's going to come in here and try to fit in and do the right thing, so he's going to be looking at how he fits in rather than how they fit him, at least initially. That's typically how it works. I don't see a problem with that. We're talking offense here. We also have to consider who plays and how much based on the other side of the ball too. Point of attack defense, that's going to dictate, which point guards get most time. And, if you find a guy who can run the pick and roll and defend a little bit on the perimeter, that might be your starter. That might be your big minute point guard. So that's what I'll be watching. But I have no doubt that Turner is going to, bring the same game here as he did. I'm told after the first practice from people that were at the practice that this team is extremely quick. They're fast. They move up and down the court. Interesting change, right? We saw the league change last year. The final 4 teams in the playoffs were all young. It was Thunderball. They play Thunderball in the NBA now. It is. I've had camera people tell me that 20 years ago, they had to have their wits about them, but now it's flat out scary down there the way these teams run so hard, so fast, every single possession, whether they're running to a spot to hit a 3, they're thundering down. They're not coming halfway and then running half-court basketball anymore. This is all out all the time, and we saw that in Indiana. We saw that in Oklahoma City, and you have to be young to do that. You need young legs to do that the way they played it last year in the playoffs, in my opinion. And this team also got a lot younger, as you know. So, this team is so different than last year's team and the one before that. It's going to be interesting to see how they adapt to the style of the league and which teams are able to do that. I think the younger teams might have a little bit of a runway here for a year or two, maybe 3 years, where they're going to do some damage just because of their youth and their ability to play this power game that we haven't seen before the last year and a half.
It's interesting to hear. I mean, it's music to a lot of Bucks fans' ears to hear about a fast Bucks team after the last few years. But as you'll recall, Jim, from the early days of Mike Budenholzer's tenure, like that was a pretty quick team too, in terms of its pace, like in terms of how many points they're putting on the board, like the traditional definition of pace, or at least the statistical definition of it, which is like how many points are you scoring per 48 minutes or whatever, like how quickly are you going through the shot clock, rather than how fast the players are actually moving. And I know, Jackson, you were talking about, Jackson and I were both on Marcus Johnson's podcast a couple weeks ago. And that was something Jackson was talking a lot about, just, the desire for more speed from this team, but especially in the front court, I think is, an area that a lot of fans in especially the last season, were just like, okay, Brook Lopez, he did great things for us over the years, but his foot speed he's lost a step now. And I look at this front court as being probably, like, if not the best, one of the, I would say, 3 best front courts in the league in terms of its depth at the 4 and 5 positions. Because you have a superstar, you have a very talented and well-fitting center with him, and then you have a guy who's in the 6th man of the year conversation every year, as long as he's playing 65 games, and then Jericho Sims behind him too, a pretty athletic and still kind of raw big man. There's a lot more speed and athleticism there. Jackson, I guess I've never asked you that question. Where do you see this front court? Like, compare it to Denver, compare it to Oklahoma City. What do you think? What do you think, Jim?
Well, Kuzma, Portis, Sims, Giannis, Turner. Okay, if that gets rolling and if they play at speed, try defending that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another possible weapon. When I hear fast and young, however, fast plus young to me probably equals turnovers and mistakes. You mentioned Budenholzer's team, fast veterans, little different.
Yeah.
So we'll have to consider that as we go and see what happens there. But, you can play fast, but you have to play fast and under control. And we'll see if they can do that with the youth that they have.
Yeah, and just to answer your question about, like, at least comparing it to Denver and OKC, at least if you're looking at the bigs, it's pretty close to me for between Denver and the Bucks, just because Giannis and Jokic are a push, and then and then you'd say probably Turner and Aaron Gordon as that second guy is probably a little bit of a push too, maybe slightly in Myles' favor. Obviously, different positions, they do different things. But then it really comes down to, do you trust Jonas Valanciunas more? Do you trust Bobby Portis more?
Sure.
At that point. So, and who knows? They've been even talking about running Valanciunas and Jokic together. So who knows what they're going to do there? And then I'd still probably give it to OKC, just because of, if you want to throw in the whole front court, you got Jalen Williams there too. But yeah, I think in terms of just like the actual bigs, I think, and Bobby talked about it during a media day, like that's like, you can't find a team with any 3 better bigs like anywhere in the league.
I would say this. I go back to 2021 when the Bucks won the championship. To me, this was never talked about enough. That team had extreme length almost at every position. Drew Holiday was a big point guard. People don't realize that he was, usually, certainly very often the biggest point guard on the floor. And you didn't see that necessarily unless you really paid attention. That team had length, and that team won a championship. So in my opinion, you can't ever really underestimate length. And Oklahoma City had length last year. Length is a big deal. And this Bucks team up front has some length.
Real quick, Jim, about turnovers. Because I totally get what you're saying with, young, quick teams. last year the Bucks, a slower veteran team, 8th best turnover rate in the league. For as much as maybe people would complain about turnovers on like specific nights, they were actually one of the better teams in the league at taking care of the ball. But so often last year, the Bucks were on the losing end of the possession battle, basically. Like the other team just had the ball more. They took oftentimes 10 more shots per game, something like that, where it's just like it's a math game at that point. And that's partially because the Bucks had the lowest offensive rebounding rate in the league, but it's also because they didn't create many turnovers. They were the 5th lowest in terms of turnovers generated, like the turnover percentage, despite being, a good rebounding team, securing their own or other teams' misses, but they weren't generating extra possessions. And this year's team, I mean, with that youth and maybe some, some issues controlling the ball on offense, do you see them as a team that can be a bit more ball hawking on the other end too?
Well, good job, Van. You caught me, because I see turnovers as a means for people to understand mistakes. I should have said
okay, sure,
mistakes. Okay, that's a different thing than turnovers.
Sure,
A young, fast team, whatever mistake you want to conjure in your mind, they probably are likely to make more of them than a veteran team is.
Yeah.
So I want to differentiate there. And then I talked about Giannis in the pick and roll with turnovers. Giannis has reduced his turnovers, I believe, 3 straight years. Not by much, but it's going in the right direction. So, we have to look at all these things. But I want to clarify that mistakes above turnovers, but turnovers tend to be the dominant mistake that teams make. But you're right about the Bucks. Now, can they force turnovers? It depends. That length helps on some of that. But, you brought up offensive rebounding. When the Bucks won the championship, I think, they were able to get back in transition and still be one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the league that year. Pretty rare. And that has dropped off since the championship season. If they can somehow figure out how to offensive rebound and transition defensively, now you're onto something. So we'll have to see. But forcing turnovers could be a big thing for them. And who does that? Everybody can do that. A lot of times your guards do it. Depends on where it occurs on the floor. If you can pick at the top, if your guard can get some turnovers at the top, that cuts the floor in half. And, that changes the game too. So very intricate. You really have to pay attention to what's really happening to understand how a team is doing that and the effectiveness of it. So we'll see. But it's a big deal. It's always a big deal. Forcing turnovers and having a plus differential is usually pretty big. And then offensive rebound, that differential is also pretty big when you talk about championship level teams.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't really realized, Jim. I mean, if you look back at that 2021 team, as you're talking about, you're right. They were 9th in the league in offensive rebounding rate. But in terms of the frequency, they were able to get back, like on offense, get in transition. Most in the league, cleaning the glass has them in transition, 17.8% of their plays. That's a pretty rare combination, but I'd have to look. I assume that was the case for at least the last couple Bud teams. I mean, I know they weren't really crashing the glass in the first year or two, but that was, I remember, a point of emphasis in that 2020-21 season, and especially in the postseason. I think they were like really trying to focus on generating those extra possessions. But also with Giannis, as you were saying, yeah, you're right. His turnover rate, it's dropped 3 years in a row. Lowest of his career last year. The lowest since 2017, 2018. I think that's a interesting segue into what our next topic is, which is where we ask you to give us your best guess on what Giannis will put up this year in some of the more traditional stats, points per game, rebounds per game, assists. I think assists is the most interesting one to me. Stocks, steals plus blocks. Usage rate, always an interesting one too, since he's maybe going to have the ball in his hands again a lot more that now that Damian Lillard is gone. But your best guess as to those?
Well, I'm going to go back to the turnovers for a moment.
Sure.
Turnovers have dropped, but when I said turnovers, I was talking specifically about in that tight, confined pick and roll situation with two huge players and a little guard in there defensively trying to pick it. I mean, that's a different situation. So, hopefully he can work on that part of it, but that's a tough place to not turn the ball over no matter what your size is. So I'll be watching that. I think his points will be at or above last season. He'll have the ball in his hand, so he can control that to a degree. But his assists will be up. His rebounding might be down a little bit because of the big front court that we've talked about, and the addition of Turner might erode that slightly. Steals, I'm going to say up a little bit. Blocks, equal or down, and I would say that the stocks, that's an interesting one there.
Chris Johnson.
I think the total on that, I think steals and blocks might be up slightly.
Yeah, Chris Johnson was thinking he could get 4 combined there. So I don't know
possibly. What was he at last year? I don't know that number. By the way, excellent job on the numbers. I'm only going by what I saw in the past and what I see.
Sure.
I'm an eyesight guy. I used to try to crunch those numbers, but I don't have to do that anymore.
Right. Yeah. He was last year at steals plus blocks 2.1 per game, which was actually one of his lower totals of his career. Usually, because he for a number of years was averaging more like 1.5 steals a game and similar amount of blocks, so he'd be more up around 3.
What's a good number in the league on that, on stocks? Is that 3?
I mean, I think that's a good number. The best guys, like you're like we're talking about, like Victor Wembanyama here would probably be up around 4 every year. I don't
think Giannis will quite get the 4 he could. I'll differentiate from Chris just slightly and say 3 plus.
Sure. Yeah. What about? Do you think? I guess okay. 2 questions. 1, do you think he's still a 30-point a game guy? And 2, do you think he averages a career high in assists? His career best was, let's see, 6 point. It was last year, 6.5. The last 2 years he's averaged that. Do you think he can break 7? Think he can set that high?
Well, it depends on how much he's holding the ball. If he's the de facto point guard for 25% of games or 20% of games, his assists have to go up. He's a great passer. And, the one thing I would have people look at, and with stats now you can do this very easily. When I was still calling games, I started to track Giannis's points off assists. And, he'd have a 35-point game and he'd pick up another 37 points from others off his assists.
Yeah.
Okay, 72 points that he had a hand in. So I'd keep an eye on that. He's unbelievable when it comes to that stat. Or at least he has been in the past, and there's no reason to think that he can't do that again. This whole thing is predicated. The whole thing about him handling the ball is predicated, to me, on whether the guys are making shots or not. If he's kicking it out and they're making shots, then they can keep doing that. If they don't make shots, then Giannis has a tendency to go back to being standard Giannis, which is at the top of the chart, of course. But when he's trying to dominate or feels he has to dominate or does have to dominate in game situations to pull out a victory, in my opinion, the Bucks become easier to defend. If Giannis is going to take it to the basket every time, you can defend that. If Giannis is handling the ball and he can find 3 or 4 different shooters and they're making shots, you can't defend that. So that's how I view the whole thing with him handling the ball. I think it's okay. Jason Kidd put the ball in his hands, and everybody talked about, he was trying to get him to be a point guard. I'm not sure that was true. I think Jason did that, and I think Giannis would tell you how beneficial that has been. I think Jason did that to accelerate Giannis's knowledge of the game and ability to see the game. You see the game differently from 7 feet tall with the ball in your hands than when you're off the ball. And I thought that was a brilliant move by Kidd back then. And, however many years later, it's becoming a real factor in the Bucks' future here, and at least temporary future. So we'll see how that plays out, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, he was standing up on a chair in practice just to see the game, which surprises me because like Jason Kidd's probably about 6'4" or so. Like, how tall a chair was that?
And no one saw the game. Very few saw the game better than Jason Kidd at the position. I mean, he was brilliant, and I remember him specifically saying, Jim, you look down on the game. You see the game from above. We don't see the game from above. He said, but Giannis does, relatively speaking, when he has the ball in his hands. And that really accelerated Giannis's understanding of how things move, how things work, where players are comfortable and that sort of thing. So it was a very astute move on Jason's part.
Absolutely. And when we talk about like usage rate, I was just looking over his usage rate. He's always kind of been, since the jump back in 2016, he's always been around like 30, upper 30s percentage wise. And then I think back to like all these other guys who have high usage rates, and you look back at like James Harden when he was with Houston. Those 2 years where he won MVP and the year after where he finished second, he was at 36.1 and 40.5 in terms of that usage rate.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. But what did his team do?
True.
They were, one of those years he made the conference finals, didn't he?
You can be a ball hog and finish plays and not win. Some players do that. Now, and I don't mean to be flip about that, but the point is if Giannis is running the offense more this year, his usage rate may drop a little bit, right? So we have to understand why, and we have to understand the impact of that. They might win more games if his usage rate drops than if it doesn't, is my point. Harden's teams didn't win that much, and so, how do you view stats? What do you think?
Yeah.
Is it support or is it, a drunk against the lamppost, to use someone else's phrase, but, we'll see.
Yeah. That's a good point. Usage is like really, in case listeners don't know, it's people think maybe it's like the amount of time that the ball is in a certain player's hands, but it's actually the amount of plays that like a team or a player ends for a team, like
percentage of plays that end with you in control of the ball.
Exactly.
Correct?
You're taking a shot, you're taking a free throw, or you're turning the ball over. So it's basically like, someone who's handling the ball, but also someone who is like taking shots for a team.
Correct. Now, his usage rate is still going to be relatively high because of who he is and how he plays. But the margins in the NBA, I know you guys probably have discovered this, but the margins on these things is so thin. I mean, he could be up a little, down a little, and the impact could be far greater than that margin is. So you always have to kind of look at result versus, stats kind of. If he drops down and they win a ton of games, that's awesome. If it, usage rate doesn't mean anything if you lose.
Right.
To me, or it means less. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And I was just kind of bringing up to show like that I don't want him to get to those like previous extremes because like you said, like, yes, the Rockets won a ton of regular season games, but they made it, the furthest they made was the conference finals during that whole run. I mean, so,
when you're doing the same thing over and over again, doesn't it stand to reason that it's easier to defend?
Yeah, you expect a James Harden ISO, you're going to get James Harden ISO.
Yeah, guess what? James Harden's going to have the ball. Okay, well, we know that. That takes away an awful lot of mental stress when he's handling the ball that much and taking it to the rim or shooting, whatever he did. Remember when the Bucks defended him and they just stayed on his, who was that? They stayed on his left side all the time, right? Played 3 feet off of him, but stayed on the left side because he wanted
Bledsoe. Yeah, Bledsoe is doing that.
So, I mean, it's just, his usage rate was probably off the charts in that game, but he couldn't score. because of the defense. So there's so many things to look at. You know what? People ask me if I miss the game and I miss my job. I miss those things, thinking and seeing that and trying to figure those things out and weighing it against usage rate. You know, he could have had the ball 100 times in that game and he wouldn't have been able to score. So, you know, it's just fascinating to me. I don't mean, you know, I'm not downplaying anything anyone's saying here. I'm just saying it's always fascinating to take that next little step and look at what it really means, right? Which you guys do every day. That's awesome.
I remember that game really well. That was pretty sure that was the same game where Giannis threw the pass at James Harden's head.
Bounced right off his head, right in the forehead, right between the eyes.
Yeah,
I started laughing when that happened, and I shouldn't have.
Did you have to hit the cough button?
I started laughing. I actually did. And that wasn't very nice of me, but it was unavoidable.
Yeah, well, you're in at least on this podcast and with us at Brew Hoop, you're in a safe space for James Harden slander and such. But anyway, well,
I mean, hey, live microphone's a tough place to be these days. I have to be very careful. I'll do it.
Don't worry. This is we're not subject to any sort of
well, that was an issue
here.
If Harden doesn't laugh at that, that's on him.
Totally.
All right. Moving on to our next one. Which player do you think will have a tangible leap, like a kind of a more significant impact on the team compared to what they did last year?
Of the players I know and have watched in the past year or two, the one that pops out to me is AJ Green. I think, like I said, there's something going on inside that kid that might translate to, you know, I don't think it's going to be, I mean, he's not going to turn into a Hall of Famer overnight, but, you know, I just like the way he goes about his business. I like the way he thinks about the game. I like the way he tries to fit into the flow and the team, and he just does his job. So it might not be real obvious, but I'd look at his numbers very carefully, and I'd look at his efficiency very carefully. And I would expect that to be an increase over last season in some fashion. That's what I think. I think Bobby Portis might have an interesting year too. I think his maturity now and comfortability with this team might allow him to step up a little bit, not to mention playing, if he gets to play with Giannis and Turner, you know, you should be able to step up in that scenario. So I guess those two maybe. I don't know if I could go three deep on that. Maybe I'm sure Gary Trent Jr. is trying to step up a little bit. And then the new players should have impact, but we can't really rate them against the previous season because they weren't here. But I guess that's what I would say. I'm kind of pinning that on AJ Green a little bit.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear about this conversation you had with him recently, and what, you know, what makes you say, like, you know, these plaudits about him, because we're fans of AJ Green around here, and it's been really great to watch his improvement over the last, I think, 3 seasons is how long he's been with the team total. But going from an undrafted guy, a two-way guy, to now like a key rotation player in this team, and potentially, I mean, he was starting in the postseason for them last year. He's a potential future star for this team, but like, that's a great player development success for the Bucks. And I'm not as familiar with him, just from how he is off the court, really, though. So what you're talking about, how he goes about his business, how he sees like his fit in the team. What did you learn talking to him that makes you think that?
Well, I had the occasion to interview AJ and his wife for a group recently, and they were delightful. And she's an athlete, also a volleyball player at Northern Iowa University. So 2 athletes, and just the way they look at life, how they go about their business, and that type of thing impressed me. He was very aware of and appreciative of playing with Giannis and watching Giannis on a daily basis and seeing the little things that Giannis does to get better. Now, I've always said Giannis ties his shoes the right way. It starts there. And, he pays attention to how he ties his shoes. And players who understand that and try to do that get better. And I think in talking with AJ, he's definitely in that group. And he admitted to me that earlier in his life and career, I mean, he was a perfectionist, a type A, and, had tunnel vision to the point where he probably had to think about it. And I identified with that because I was the same way. I mean, it was like all in. And, as you mature and get a little bit older, you learn to balance that. And then it becomes a situation that gets even better. Does that make sense? When you manage it and understand it. So I don't know. I just had a great feel for how he goes about his business, how he thinks about his business. Am I correct that he's on his first guaranteed full NBA deal right now? Yeah,
he is, and he is eligible for an extension right now too.
Right. So, he's had to work for everything he's gotten so far, and I don't think that bothers him at all. In fact, I think he likes that. And so those are the kind of guys, and those are the kind of thoughts and things that I see that have always sort of meant good things for people. We all get ahead of ourselves. We tend to get ahead of ourselves. And this kid seems to be relying on and believing in small steps lead to big things. And and I flat out asked him, I said, is there one thing, do you have something in your mind that you're going to do that could make you even better than you were last year? And he said, I do. And we didn't really, I didn't, it was team stuff. I can do this better to make the team better. I can do this better to help Giannis. I can do this better. So, to me, really good, spot on mental approach to the game. And I'm a big mental guy. I think that teams, sometimes I wonder, if teams get to the playoffs and it's like they don't even know where they are. They haven't even thought about it. They just assume they were going to be in the playoffs, and that's good enough. You know what? You have to think about every situation. I believe, and I've said this to people with the team, I think that what I saw in the last 2 years was I want to see a team that picks out games on its schedule and decides collectively that that's a game they have to win. Regular season. I want teams to tell the rest of the league and show the rest of the league what they're going to face in the playoffs. 2 years ago, the Bucks lost 5 times to the Indiana Pacers. And guess what? Playoffs came. They didn't do very well against the Indiana Pacers. So that's where I'm coming from. Think it through. Let's collectively figure out, if you take it in 10-game blocks, whatever you want to do, pick out 3 games that are more important than the others, because there are games that are more important than the others in the regular season, and figure out, what it could mean later, and try to apply some of the mental capabilities you have as a team toward showing what you're going to be when the real time comes in the postseason. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally.
And so I think Green, I think AJ Green, and there are others who get that. I mean, it's not like it's, not there. It's just that when you see it and hear it, you recognize it. At least I do. And I felt like Green understands all of that stuff. So, those are the people that can make stuff happen.
With Green last year, I know I've said this on this pod before, but he's got this, because of his role in the league, just what people may perceive of him based on his size, his player type, as not being a defender. But he's had some really great defensive moments, I'd say individually and like one-on-one over the years. But talking about, earlier you're talking about mistakes, not turnovers, but just mistakes that teams make. I saw him make those mistakes primarily on the defensive end. And when you say, what he's got in mind and how it's a team focused thing, I've always said like team defense is what he needs to work on the most. Just making the right rotation, making the correct, I guess, the switches when you need to, and being on the same page with people. So yeah, I think that it's good to know that he's like what he's thinking of in terms of how he can up his game is a team-based thing, and how he can make his teammates better on.
Well, you've triggered something in me, Van. That's one of the things he mentioned, was he feels he can be better, even better defensively. Now, think about it for a second. Northern Iowa University, how far is that from NBA defense?
What are they, the Missouri Valley Conference or something?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not to denigrate anything, but
No.
you cannot replicate anything in the NBA outside of the NBA. So he got here, and every player gets here. They have no clue of the speed, unless they play with, 10 NBA guys in the summer before their rookie season in Houston or something. They have no clue how, the game is played every night in this league, the speed, the thunder, the lightning, and all the stuff that goes into the NBA. You can't replicate that anywhere. It takes time to figure that out. And I think that he has made strides in that area. I wanted to ask you guys, am I correct that at some point in this offseason, people were talking about the possibility that he might be dealt away?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When
I heard that, I went like, what are you watching?
The main reason,
maybe it could happen. Anything can happen. But on the surface, what are you thinking if you think he's the guy you should trade away? He was consistent, right?
Yeah. When I postulated that, yeah, and I know I brought that up as a possibility, like on Locked On and things. It's more because, when he became extension eligible, I think it was on like the 8th or the 6th of August or something. We didn't see it get done. And Jackson, you asked about it at Media Day the other day, and it sounds like there have been conversations and they're still ongoing. But the main reason I think it's a possibility is not because I don't think the Bucks like him. I think the Bucks like him a lot, and I like him a lot, and I know fans do. It's just because if the Bucks wanted to acquire like a real impact talent, all-star level guy, or someone who has that kind of upside, I think, first of all, it would require their 2031 first round pick, 2032 pick swap in whichever fashion. If they did it next summer, 2023 first round pick too. But I think it also, it's going to require some salary matching, but it would also require probably like a good young player.
I'm not saying that he can't
AJ Green.
trade it. I'm not saying that at all, because
that's the only reason I thought it was possible.
Yeah, there are always circumstances where anybody can be included in a deal, but the Bucks have so many players on their roster now. Somebody's going to have to go, and if somebody thinks he's the guy that has to go scenario,
no,
definitely not.
And I know I'm not talking about you guys.
No,
but if anybody thinks somehow that that would happen, I go, what are you watching? I mean, this kid contributes, and I'm not here to beat the drum of AJ Green, but I'm not going to let people not beat that drum a little.
Oh yeah, I think people are very much. Yeah, no, I think fans are really like very high on him. People are very loath to trade him. In even if it was for like, I've just bounced it around people. So obviously, it's like if you could get someone like the name that I've always brought up was Trey Murphy from the New Orleans Pelicans. If you could get him, like for the first round picks, would you give up AJ Green? And people are like, boy, I really don't want to do that. I really like Trey Murphy. I think he would fit really well on this team, but so does AJ Green. And while I don't think anyone maybe has the idea that he's got like this kind of all-star upside, he's certainly a winning player and is the right dude for this team right now, I think, and could be for a few more years.
Yeah, you guys know this, but sometimes players are traded because teams want to get rid of them.
Yes.
And sometimes players are traded because other teams want them. I would suggest that right now,
absolutely,
would be a player that other teams would want.
Exactly.
And superstar, come on, no, we're not. The league. We all are taught that the league is a league of superstars. Well, frankly, if you look at the numbers, it's not. There are
not right now, no.
But you need guys that can do the same thing every night. Here's the deal: if I'm coaching, and coaches will tell you this, if I give you 7 rebounds a night and that's all I do, you can use me without thinking. You know when you need those rebounds, I'm your guy. If I give you 3 3-pointers in 8 minutes, and you know when that is necessary, I'm your guy. And to me, that's the kind of player that AJ Green is. Very consistent. He gives you what he gives you. He's going to improve incrementally. And so that's kind of why I'm high on him. Those are the pieces that sometimes people think, you can do better. Well, maybe you can, because it's locked in. And coaches love that when they have guys that they can count on most nights like that, because they can plug them in to situations. And that's really huge.
I think the phrase that usually gets tossed around with guys like AJ Green is obviously not an all-star ceiling, but all-star in their role. And I think if he didn't get there last year, I think certainly he will get there this year, where he will be a true all-star in his role as a pointed attack defender and a higher volume 3-point shooter. I think he could get up to like 6 or 7 a night.
That would be so great. I just had 2 quick thoughts. Who else do the Bucks have that would fit that situation that we're talking about with AJ Green? Who do they have that they, that gives you something every night you wouldn't want to part with? You'd have to think about it long and hard to part with that. I mean, is Portis in that situation? Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I toss in Gary Trent Jr. For his 3-point shooting and his even ability to get some mid-range shots up as a little bit different.
Yeah, and just fill up the scoreboard. I would say the same for Kevin Porter Jr. Like, those are guys who could give you 30. They could give you maybe even more.
Well, sometimes I only need 2. And and I need a guy who can get me 2, or who can move the scoreboard after we're sitting on a number for a long time. Things like that are very important in the league. So, the more of those guys you have, around a Giannis and around Turner, and your big 2 or 3, if you're lucky enough to have 3, those are the guys that make a difference.
Absolutely. And it's funny that we brought 3 of those guys up, because that perfectly leads into our next question, is that to rank these 4 players in terms of their importance for this season. So we got Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr., AJ Green, and Kyle Kuzma.
Wow. I typically don't like to rank anything because I've been around too long to know that anything can happen. I'll play along with you. I think Kuzma, his consistency is going to be important to this team. If he can develop some kind of consistency, the athletic ability is there. So that consistency, if it occurs with this group, would be huge, in my opinion. Just solid minutes. Again, what are you going to give me, Kuz? What can you give me every night that I can count on? And then you and I can both figure out when you should be used, and you're going to be comfortable with it. I'm going to be happy with it. And, you go to battle. So that's how I would answer that question, I think.
Yeah, he is a bit of a lightning rod right now among the fan base. And it was interesting to hear also on Media Day. Justin Garcia mentioned this on Locked On last night, how he sat down and talked with Kuzma for a while. And just kind of being, I guess, a little taken with how personable the guy is. And I mean, he wasn't around long enough in the season for either Jackson or I think really anyone in the media to get to know too well. But it was clear, like, he was not, I don't know if it was a comfort factor, but so I guess I shouldn't say it was clear he was not comfortable, but it seemed like maybe, he was just trying to do too much a lot of the time, like partially because he had been that guy,
right?
Yeah, and he had been that guy with Washington. He was a 20-point a game scorer for them in recent seasons, and he's replacing a franchise legend who had still in his final season with the team. Chris Middleton still had a very big role as one of the, I mean, on some nights, even last year, still the primary scorer and primary option, like around the holidays last year when when Giannis, I should say, and Dame were both ill with that Vegas flu that they picked up at the NBA Cup. Chris was still that guy, and I think Kuzma was trying to be that guy a bit too much, especially when we got to the postseason, and the results were just not there at all. And here's my question for you, though, Jim. What does consistency and like productivity, I guess, look like for Kuzma this year? Like, what can he give the team on a nightly basis, like we've been talking about, that they can rely on and that will help them win? Like, it can be a few things, or it can be one thing more than anything.
Yeah, that'd be hard for me to answer. I don't know his game well enough to give you a definitive answer there, but I'll say a couple of things. I think that I expect him to be more impactful as he becomes more comfortable with this team. Obviously, the Bucks saw things in him that they like, and so if he can be consistently Kyle Kuzma that the Bucks like, it's a win. Whatever that is, he does multiple things.
He defends. He can pass a little bit too.
Yeah. I mean,
Good cutter.
He's athletic, and he can play off the ball. So, again, he's a basketball player. I will tell you one thing that I learned about him. You mentioned that he was affable, and people didn't know that because he wasn't here long enough. I'm told that he's a very good guy, and I always look at everything I can to evaluate players. I don't look at only what they do on the court, because I think this game is so much more than that. But I've been told that the Bucks players contribute to different initiatives away from the court, like Thanksgiving turkey dinners and Christmas shopping for kids and all that kind of thing. I'm told that Kyle Kuzma has been very agreeable to doing that. And not only that, he said, "What did you do last year?" And they tell him the number and everything. And he said, "I'll double that." Okay. So that hit me. Now we're dealing with a guy who is plugged in on different levels. So I hope he finds success here and finds consistency here. Those are the kind of people, and that attitude and that total away from the court approach to life should be rewarded. And, I hope it happens for him.
I think he's that's interesting. I did not know that. It's interesting to hear. And I mean, I think it's safe to say that just this year, like he is kind of one of those X factor guys where like a successful season from him would really raise this team's ceiling. One guy I'd also say who fits that that descriptor, who we haven't spent a lot of time talking about, is Kevin Porter Jr. And I think a lot of people are of the mind that if there is one player who could make the jump from what he is now or what we've seen into like potentially an all-star, it's Kevin Porter Jr. And forgive me, Jim, I don't remember if you were around when he had that 50-point game against the Bucks a few years ago.
I remember.
Yeah. I don't remember if you were still.
I don't remember if it was. I don't know if I called that game or not, but
sure,
certainly remember it.
Yeah, I mean, do you see that with him? Because I think, like, again, an X factor, like if he raises the bar, like the team ceiling, if he develops another hits another level as a player, the team ceiling raises a lot more. Do you think he's got that in him?
Well, he proved that he did with 50 points. But I would say that for most players in the league, 50-point games are circumstantial.
Especially for him on that team. Yeah.
Well, for most players, really. I mean, it's circumstantial. And, you can't take it away from him. He did it. It's like Brandon Jennings with 55, circumstantial, but he made it circumstantial that night. He scored 55 points. So players tend to establish their own ceilings. And, that's a pretty high ceiling that, he's not going to hit very often, but that tells you that the ability is there and the mental approach and the tenacity and all of the things that go into it are there. With I don't know KPJ at all, so I know his game a little bit, and I know about him and all of that stuff. I would suggest my feeling. I just sense that again, this might be this situation in Milwaukee with this team and these players might be his best opportunity. And if he recognizes that, it could be a positive situation. And, there's two parts to that. It's there if you get it and you take advantage of it and you appreciate it and you contribute to it. Sometimes it's there and players miss it. But, if he sees it and if he feels comfortable with it and if he feels that way about it, he could improve greatly, I think. That's pretty generic, but it's true. Sometimes, sometimes generic situations play out pretty regularly.
Doc has talked about in recent days how he just, he didn't have this kind of an opportunity, Kevin Porter Jr., but also how he said, Scoot has said, I've been a starting point guard in this league, Doc, and I've done this and this and this. And Doc has said, with, lovingly, it sounds like, yeah, but you did that. We want that to happen on a winning team. You were doing that on
such a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Such a big difference. Guys, people can score 50 on a losing team. People score. There've been a lot of players. I mean, that in my time where, they'd score 20 points in the fourth quarter, in losses all the time. Yeah. Because they were in the game in the fourth quarter in lopsided situations where they, nobody cared what anybody did, and they just, shot and made them. And so it's all, I said circumstantial in a way. I would use the same word to describe the fact that, everything is circumstantial. Can you take advantage of the circumstances is the key question.
Right. Yeah. Well, I know you touched on this earlier. When you talked about point guard play, as we've been talking about Kevin Porter Jr. and saying that was what you saw as the greatest weakness on this team, but
potential weakness, yeah,
potential weakness. Well, okay, then if that's their greatest potential weakness, what?
Because I don't know the new players. I mean,
right. So, well, then if maybe it's point guard play, maybe it's not. What do you think is their greatest weakness, and also what do you think their greatest strength is?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons I said greatest weakness was because in my mind I'm thinking about point of attack defense from a point guard. Okay, so that's a big deal, and I don't know if I've talked to you guys about this, but and I don't want to go back to this particular player and the success that he had here, but I have to in a way because he did something that I haven't seen too many players be able to do, and that's Drew Holiday, point of attack defense. My contention is Drew Holiday played defense for 1 second. 1 second. And he was brilliant. He was brilliant at applying defense at the most opportune time for 1 second, at the most opportune position on the floor for 1 second. Now, this is, that's probably an overstatement, but it's not much of an overstatement. He applied defense at precisely the right time, in precisely the right amount, that allowed Brook Lopez to be in position so he could go straight up for block shots. When Holiday left early the first season of his absence, Brook was knocking balls out of bounds when he blocked shots because he was moving toward the block. He was heading into position for the block, and he'd get the block, but he couldn't control it. When he went straight up and was in position to go straight up and block, he could control them a lot more, as one example. And that might be an oversimplification, but I really believe, if I were a coach, I would tell all my point guards to consider learning how to play defense at different points on the floor at the precise second it's needed. Now, highly developed skill, because I've never said that about another player. I'm sure there are other players who do. And I'll say this, Marcus Johnson, the other day, we talked on Friday, and he said, I keep thinking about something you said one time, and I keep thinking about the guards that I played with. Everybody talks about positionless basketball, and one time I was working with Marcus, and I said, that's great at 4 positions. There's one position that cannot be positionless. The point guard has to be a point guard.
Marcus said that recently on some. Yeah, he's mentioned this before. I heard this.
He told me that he had, and he said when you said that, I started thinking about the point guards I played with, and they all brought control and insight and timing and 1 second of defense in the case of Drew Holiday. So yeah, I mean, I'm going to stick with that the rest of my life. You can have positionless 2 through 5. But you better not be positionless at the point guard or you're going to be in a deficit. So when I say greatest weakness, it's hard to find true point guards anymore, too. I mean, there aren't many around. Who was I was talking with somebody about the last really true point guard the Bucks have had, and it's, you have to think about that. Drew Holiday.
Ramon Sessions.
Ramon came up, Brandon Jennings, and
yeah. Maybe Kendall Marshall. That's a name.
Yeah.
TJ Ford. TJ Ford, sure, yeah.
Wow. But and people will tell you that Drew Holiday isn't a quote pure point guard. He's pretty close.
Yeah.
Well, and in today's game, let me have 3 of those. I'll take them. But in following each other, 1, 2, 3 over 20 years or whatever. But so that position still, in my mind, has to have certain qualities about it for teams to be ultimately successful. And, we should probably go back and look at the championship teams of recent years and evaluate their play at point guard on both sides of the ball and see what we think about that. But I'm sticking with that. You can have positionless 2 through 5, but don't be positionless at 1.
Yeah,
it's
I tend to agree.
it's 1 and 4 others is what it is for me. And
you have,
yeah.
With in this positionless NBA right now, I still think that there are clear roles on the defensive end. Like someone has to be able to defend ball handler, especially like a quick ball handler.
Point of attack is just enormously.
You have to have someone who can defend point guard. And that person might not be the point guard on offense. I mean, I would say with last year's team after Dame, with Dame, like he was maybe, he wasn't always doing that sometimes. And like, if he was off the floor and like maybe Giannis or Chris were sort of running the offense, like there was another guard in there. Or maybe in the previous season, you had someone like Patrick Beverley in there who was doing that. He was defending the ball.
He was. He had certain skills that put him a little closer to being a true than a lot of people. True with consistency is what you're really looking for. Drew Holiday, I said, played 1 second. He might have played 1 second of defense 3 times on a possession.
On a possession, sure.
But, I make the point by saying, it's that 1 second at the precise time that can really screw up an offense. And he was very good at that.
Timing, the right time to blitz and everything.
That's just a knack, and that's something that I'm not sure you can expect from everybody. But I do think you can talk about it and maybe make that some sort of a goal. If that's in your mind, maybe you get better at it.
Yeah, defense is just so
because everybody thinks defense is consistent, constant. You're always pressuring. No, you don't have to do that. You could, and think what that does for your body. Think what that does for your stamina throughout the game. If you can apply it judiciously at precisely the right time, I mean, what an asset! What an asset.
So, what do you think their greatest strength, though, is the Bucks right now? Like, because I would agree with you about the point of attack defense.
I mean, you have to say number 34, right?
Sure. Easy answer.
Yeah, that's an easy answer, but I think it goes beyond that. I think that. Starts with him, and then I wonder how easy it is for a lot of players to play with a player like Giannis. There's no doubt what's happening. Now, how do you fit into that? How do you make yourself be a piece that works with others to make that a whole? And those are the kinds of things that, to me are most important when you have a player like Giannis. And I'm sure that's true in Denver, with Jokic, and it was true with Magic. It was true with Bird. It was true with all of them. How do you play off of that person getting the most out of yourself to make the sum greater than its parts, right? And so tough to do, but something to think about. If you have a Giannis, then you add a Turner, and that could be better than either one of them. The combination could be more than each, right? And we'll see. So that's the whole goal of putting teams together, is to find multiple pieces that are greater than the individual pieces alone.
To me, that's what makes a coach great too, is that they can elicit that from a team or individual players. Like to me, Greg Popovich is the best coach of all time because he got the most out of his players. Like he was, I don't think that, I mean, I would even maybe say for Duncan, I don't know if Duncan is a top 10 player all time if he doesn't play with Pop. And I don't know if Manu and Parker are Hall of Famers necessarily. I think they're great players, but the other players too. Diao,
There's a key element there, though.
Mm-hmm.
San Antonio's MO, and they said this: we bring players here who are already over themselves.
They don't think they have any, like
we bring players here who are already over themselves. How much easier would that be to coach than what most coaches have to deal with? And that's what I'm talking about. If you have people who aren't about themselves or are over themselves, they can fit better with a superstar. They can be the additive if they're thinking that way. That's why San Antonio, in my opinion, that's why Pop was a great coach, because they brought people in that he could coach.
Yeah. And I think, always, I thought the same thing about Bud. Like in Atlanta, I thought because he was getting the most out of his players, and these teams were always like those Atlanta teams and a lot of these Spurs teams too, greater than some of its parts. I would say the same thing about some of these Bucks teams he coached, and I think the Bucks have been less than the sum of their parts for a couple years now. Exactly. And you look at other, it's like you look at other guys who were under Pop's tree, and like you have Udoka in the league right now, Will Hardy, some previous guys like Brett Brown, like Joe Prunty, who was with the Bucks. For us, like being Wisconsin like basketball people, I thought Bo Ryan was always one of those guys too.
He was
greater than the sum of their parts. All these teams and all these players, I think, were better for being in that system. And Bud kind of got that, I think, as well in Milwaukee.
What do you stand for?
In this situation, yeah.
What do you stand for? Do you stand for yourself, or do you stand for the effort, for the team? Do you stand?
Yeah.
And San Antonio, in my time in the league, did that better than anybody, any team, any organization. Not easy to do, but again, you can't do something that you don't identify, right? You have to identify these things. You have to believe in that identification, and then you can work toward it. And that's why I think, the NBA, to me, the greatest athletes in the world, but to me, it's a mental game. And it's a mental game in the front office. It's a mental game on the court. It's a mental game. How do you view today's situation? What are you doing today? How do you approach the game today? How do you approach your life? What's important to you? And San Antonio did a great job identifying people that fit into a team concept.
Yeah, I've been while you guys have been talking, I've been thinking about like previous stars and like stars who get older, and like when they go to other teams and kind of accept that newer role, or accept that they're not the same player. I'm thinking like Ray Allen in Miami,
Chris Middleton in Washington right now.
Chris Middleton, Kevin Love when he was with the Cavs. It perfectly explains that compared to like a guy like Kyrie Irving, who wanted to be that guy, and so they shipped him out. But Kevin Love stayed the entire time LeBron was there, and even a few years after that. So thinking about those guys who like you were talking about with San Antonio, guys who can just get over themselves.
Yeah. These are things that people don't often talk about, and I think they're some of the most important things when you're team building. It's obvious to me that they are.
Yeah. I think the players that the Bucks have had over the years, they kind of fit the mold you're talking about too, is just being certainly like, at the top of the roster with Middleton and Giannis, despite being like the stars that they are. I think they are over themselves. And
it's interesting. About halfway through my career, players used to tell me that their two favorite spots to play in the league when they had played in these two spots. Interestingly to me, and still interesting to me, Milwaukee and San Antonio, not in that order necessarily, but they always said those were the two spots that landed on them differently than other places.
And when were you hearing that? Like what era for the Bucks?
I started to hear that, midway through my career, so that would be
interesting.
Early '90s. Probably started hearing that. As I got to know more guys, players that had either been close to or had played in San Antonio and in Milwaukee said these are the two places that stand out among all the others.
So that would have been like, I guess, kind of towards the end of like that. I'm sorry, Del Harris. I almost said Del Curry.
Somewhere in that neighborhood, I started to hear it. I mean,
interesting.
Yeah, and part of that was that I became more comfortable and knew more people, and they used to. I heard it more than once, heard it more than twice, and so when you hear something three times, you start to pay attention. And so, it always sat with me, just the way they're treated, what was expected, how they were made comfortable. And they said Milwaukee and San Antonio did a really good job of that.
Well, that's why you got, Alvin Robertson and Dale Ellis were as good as they were, right?
Alvin Robertson was one of the names.
Jerry Cummings too, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. Should we start with the quick hits, Jackson?
I think so. So this used to be the like, what do you hope to see from like the Bucks this season? Like the joke always is that what's it going to make it worth it to watch a February Tuesday night game in Detroit that's kind of now swapped over to
we'll say Washington or Charlotte now.
Yeah. Right. So
this is just me talking, and that comes from 35 years of calling games, and it's interesting how I kind of plug into the games now and what I look for. I mean, I was busy doing the games, so now I pay attention to how I watch the games. And I touched on it. I mean, I want to see this team show me that they are big picture, long-term thinking about what they do tonight and how it's going to impact what they need to do in late April, May, and June. That would make it very watchable for me if I think that they are, able to identify and execute and send messages throughout the league sporadically and surgically to let teams know that they're going to be a factor in the postseason.
They got those games circled on their calendar. Yeah.
Yeah. I go back to the window. The window's closed a little bit since 21, if not a lot. It's still open. But you know what? You have to show me how open it is, and you have to show me what I'm going to get if I go through that window. And I want to see that I'll give you October. I want to see it in November through April. Okay. I want to see times where I can tell you identified this game to send a message. And I noticed that when I watched. I mean, if I tune in and it's, a game against Boston, and I understand that there are times when you don't want to show a certain team anything, and Boston comes to mind. I think they did that a little bit in the past couple of years, and I can identify that when I think about it. But most often, I want to see, like I don't want to see I don't want to see so-so games against Indiana. This year is different because they don't have Halliburton, but they may have them for the playoffs. So, I want to see you pay back people who tattooed you. I want recognition. I want to see recognition on that level. But that's just me. And I don't expect that to be something that everybody would look at, but that's how I view it.
Yeah.
No.
Do you think this might be what you just said? This could answer your next question too.
Probably will, because I'm kind of
well,
redundant.
I mean, I think it would be a good answer to this question. Is why I say that. You might remember this from last year. We have the caveat here, like you can't answer this question with they have to win 4 playoff series or 16 playoff games. But what in order for the Bucks to win a title, they must blank.
Get to the Eastern Conference Finals.
We have to add that one. You can't say that either. You have to win your first playoff series. You have to win.
I mean, John McLaughlin used to
playoffs.
say, Jim, the Bucks just have to score more points than their opponent.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the question is, what would make the season a success?
Well, I mean,
Or-
what would make? I think the success that's defined differently. But for the Bucks to win a title, what do they have to do? Like specifically to win a championship?
Oh, well, you're going to say this is, not an applicable answer either, but, some things never change. They have to be healthy.
Yeah. I mean, that's totally fair. They haven't been for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
They have to have some luck, like, Durant stepping on the line by an inch. You have to have luck. You don't win without luck. And then, you know what? My third thing and the most important thing for me is proper focus. Even when they won that year in 21, there were a couple of games where I thought, do these guys know where they are? It's like they were playing really well, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah, game 2 in Brooklyn.
Yeah, game 2 in Brooklyn is a perfect example. And it's like, what am I watching? What am I seeing here? What happened? This only feels like it's going to be bad. And, so you try to avoid that kind of stuff. Recognition is just recognizing the situation. To me, it seems so simple and taken for granted, but it really isn't. I think you really have to hone in on recognition to win a championship, and you have to be nasty, man. You've got to be. You have to have nasty mental skills to win a title in the NBA or any league, for that matter.
Totally. Well,
you didn't throw that one out. That's good.
No. We just wanted to get rid of the very perfunctory answers. Oh yes, they need to win. They need to score more points than the opponent.
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to
game.
I'll go back to my Eastern Conference Finals. If they got to that point, would it be a successful season?
You see, I think a lot of people would say so, and I mean,
but is it?
That's I think
I don't know. I mean, I would say, yeah, you could say it is, but I'm sure the team wouldn't agree with that.
I'm sure, and they shouldn't. I think
no, they shouldn't.
the
you know what their goal is. You don't have to even ask that.
Of course, and
but now, how do they get there?
Right. A few years ago, when after they lost to the Heat in the first round, and of course the memorable moment where Eric Name asks Giannis, about the failure, and then how Giannis responds. I realized at that point, it's like, you know what, a player like Giannis, and just anyone who is actually doing the thing, like they're playing the games, they are like they're doing the thing that people are judging, whether it's a success or the failure. They get to define that the way they want to, and they get to use that the way they want to. Like Giannis can, fans or other people can say this season was a failure for the Bucks because they lost in the first round to the Heat in 5 games. Giannis doesn't have to think that way. He can think about it, and he shouldn't. Yeah, I agree. He can think of it as maybe like
that was one of my favorite moments in my whole career, by the way, in terms of thoughtful, interesting reactions. I knew at the time. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I knew at the time that people were going to see that as a deflection. But
that's the wrong way to look at it.
That's how athletes live.
Yeah.
How else would you have them think?
Michael Jordan said he talked about, I'd missed, 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost however many games. Exactly. I've lost this many playoff series. I've been counted on to take the final shot, that would have won or tied the game 26 times and missed it. And all those failures are why I succeed.
One team wins. One team wins, right?
Yep.
And so if you let the fact that you're one of the other 29 teams bother you or set you off course in some way, that makes no sense.
Yeah, you have to keep it in perspective.
The world would be a better place if we all thought the way Giannis described it that night. If each of us did that, think what the world would be like.
Yeah, especially if we judged other people on those kinds of
judge yourself is the key.
Yeah, and two, yeah. Well, yeah, and you got to do it yourself, like Giannis.
Yeah, I mean, he was talking about him, and it's if we all looked at life the way he looks at success, and there is no failure. Well, that's a tough one to swallow, because there is failure. But if you broaden it out to the big picture, we should all understand what he's saying, because he has to go to work the next day, or after the break. But, you have to come back to work. We all have to go back to work. So how are we going to go back to work after we have it handed to us? That's what he's talking about. You must persist. And I thought it was really great. And, I really liked it. But I knew it would be kind of misinterpreted, because most people never really get around to thinking about their role in that sort of life. Yeah. And most people don't, unfortunately, have the opportunity to live that sort of life.
And they see things so binary too. It's like win or lose.
Yeah, people see black and white, win, loss, and all that, but they don't think about what that really means. If all of us, woke up and online, or I almost said in the paper, but we wouldn't read the paper anymore. But if every morning we woke up and somewhere we could go and see whether we won or lost yesterday, it might change how we look at life a little bit.
Yeah,
that's what those people live. They either won or they lost,
and everyone sees it.
and it's public. So people say, they make millions of dollars to go through that absolute terrible drudgery. Well, they do, but it's still definitive. How's that?
Yeah, and most
of us don't live definitive lives like that. And so I thought it was cool, and I thought it was something that kids should think about and listen to. And I always say, learn to crawl, then learn to walk, and then learn to take small steps, and keep on working until you run. And maybe you get something out of it. But that's all he was really saying was, I have to come back and do this again. I can't think I've failed. If I fail every year, if not winning the championship is failure, what am I doing here? Right?
Yeah.
It's not what it's about. It's about getting better, 1% better every day.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a really neat look into his mind. There must be something, in Greece, like they were teaching Giannis in elementary school. They were teaching him about Socrates and all those guys. something there, man. But Jim, one of my favorite things about always doing these with you is just like the kind of wisdom you always drop on us, like the basketball knowledge and then stuff like that. So that was just great, man. Just hearing that. I
appreciate that. I mean, I've had the privilege of being around athletes who are at the absolute top of their particular food chains. And if I hadn't paid attention, I wouldn't be too bright.
That's good. We're all students. We're students of the game. We're students of life.
We all should be students, but a lot of us are not.
No.
A lot of us are not. And, I would have wasted 35 years if I hadn't, studied it and learned from it. I mean, it was a great blessing. And I'm so thankful for that because, it might be all just, pie in the sky, Pollyanna stuff, but if you really look closely, there's some pretty good lessons that we see and are, brushed up against every day when you work in pro sports, I think. And all sports, but pro sports particularly.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right. Our last question before we get into the fun stuff is, where do you think the Bucks are going to finish in the East this year, and how far do you think they make it in the playoffs?
This is what I don't do. How could I possibly answer?
We'll make a note of that for next year. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I make the point that, I just learned not to do that because I'm going to be wrong. And you're going to throw me out for this, but, top four in the East in the regular season. and I would hope. It's just
That's fine.
my mind just doesn't allow me to do that because I know the percentages are so against me in my own mind that
Yeah.
that it I can't do it because I know I'm going to be wrong.
Right.
I do things when I know I'm going to be wrong, but just not in this case.
That's fine. I mean, like listen, that's why I don't gamble. Like I get it.
I was going to say that, but yeah,
It's okay.
Exactly. I mean, we hope for the best. Can they win it all? Yes. Will they win it all? They have to show us.
Yeah,
Totally. A fair answer.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a bit of self-preservation I should take because last year I said they were going to win it all. So maybe I should just not predict things anymore.
Some of that comes from working for a team too.
Sure. Yeah.
They don't need me out there putting a high bar on something that the percentages are against. So you learn to
We've had that luxury, Jackson and I, not being team employees ever, just to kind of.
Well, I mean, there is a difference, right? I mean, yeah. It's and I'm glad I got a chance to do that. I learned how to I learned how to fudge.
Yeah, totally. Talking about my girlfriend, she works in she has a communications background and she works in ad sales now, but just talking about the Bucks media relations team and like Barry and Dan and Kate and Amanda, like just trying to figure out, okay, so what do we think they do? Like, and she had her own ideas and everything. It's like, yeah, okay, I can see that. It's like, this is how, and this is how it manifests in what we hear about the team, what we know about the team, and like their team employees. I mean, that's their job. So I totally get it.
Well, I mentioned that I tried to pay attention for 35 years, and that's one of the things I paid attention to.
Yeah. Yeah. I may have some questions to ask you off air about that. We'll save that for another time.
Okay.
All right.
So, Jackson, it's a miscellaneous time, huh?
Yes.
Miscellaneous. Holy cow. Okay.
Yeah. We're done with the basketball stuff now.
All right.
So, Jackson, he hasn't been on for a bit. You might not know this, Jim, but Jackson, just like the new center for the Milwaukee Bucks, Myles Turner, big Lego guy, big Lego dude. So we have a segment called Jackson's Build, where he's going to show us something he's put together lately.
Oh, cool! I don't know much about Legos other than I don't want to step on them anymore.
No one ever wants to do that. That's one of the worst things you can wish upon someone. I hope you step on Lego,
especially in the dark.
Exactly. Oh. Well, my poor parents growing up. Jeez.
Oh.
Anyway, Jackson, I'm gonna give you the solo screen right now. Show us what you got.
Okay. So for my build this week, if you can kind of see it, my background's kind of messing it up right now. But this is the Starfighter for Ahsoka Tano, who was was Anakin's apprentice during the Clone Wars TV show. So it comes with 2 figures, which was awesome. You get a little droid in here too, and it kind of has little flappy wings, so you can kind of bend all the way out if you're feeling spicy. And then, of course, as with every Lego Star Wars thing, it comes with little green plastic blasters. So there we go.
Oh wow, it's an action. Yeah, if you're not watching on YouTube, check out the action. This is the point of the podcast. We always tell everyone check out the action shots and what the actual set looks like on YouTube. So
yeah, so that's always just kind of explain it for you, Jim. I got back into Lego, and it's kind of been like a meditative thing because it's just like you're sitting down and focusing on one thing. I don't have a phone open. I don't have the TV on. It's kind of like a nice way to disconnect. But yeah, this was it probably took like half an hour at the most for this. There wasn't a ton of pieces to it. If I had to give it a rating on level of fun to build, I would probably give it 4 out of 5 Lego bricks. It's usually my standard for that.
That you don't want to step on, Jim.
That's very impressive. I'm a boomer. I just meditate.
I meditate too, but this is just also this also lets me nerd out a little bit too.
That's
Jim,
cool.
I think you'll appreciate this. It's part of my background. I just took it down. I have back in, let's see, it was like 2003 or so when I was maybe, I don't know, maybe I was a little too old to be playing with Legos at that point, but they released a bunch of NBA Lego figurines. I've got all 6 of these guys, former Bucks from that time. Current Bucks at that time are former. We got Ray Allen, Gary Payton, Tony Kukoc, Jerry Stackhouse, Pau Gasol, who played for the Bucks much later, and Jason Kidd, who obviously didn't play for the Bucks. But these are minifigures of them with their team, circa like 2002 or 2003. I remember, right after they released these was the trade between these two guys right here. So you just had to switch their heads onto the different uniforms.
Very cool. Let's see,
Yeah.
what do I have? See that picture on the wall, that black and white picture right there?
Yeah. Oh, give us the tour.
That's a Kareem signed photo.
Great.
Oh, wow.
You see the jersey behind me?
Is that Charlie Villanueva?
Villanueva, yeah.
Yeah, Charlie Villanueva.
Mhm.
Now, why would I have a Charlie Villanueva jersey? I was at
I like
Andrew
him.
Bogut's fundraiser for the wildfires in Australia, and they had jerseys, and Charlie didn't have any bids, so I bid on it and won it. And then I said, okay. I don't get autographs. I didn't get autographs, but I guess, what am I going to do with this? So that was the year that Charlie Villanueva became the first professional athlete to tweet
I knew you were going to say it.
during the game. He tweeted it.
I knew you were going to say it. The locker room in Detroit or wherever it was.
Yes. So that jersey says, Twitter me at, and he has his handle. And he signed it, and it's one of one. So I have
That's amazing.
the first professional athlete to use Twitter in the game.
That's amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
my God.
You ever watch Antiques Roadshow, Jim?
I do.
Yeah,
I
this
do.
is like an Antiques Roadshow kind of moment.
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I was hoping when Elon Musk bought Twitter that I might be able to sell that to him, but I didn't.
didn't hear back.
Yeah, when he got rid of the sinks and everything, I figured he didn't want a jersey. So
Yeah. Oh, that's a great piece of memorabilia, Jim.
yeah, it's pretty cool. And I didn't collect stuff, but I have more stuff than I could put in a storage locker. So I don't know how that happened. It just kind of finds its way to me. But yeah, those are two of the weird ones. But I'll share something with you. And when I retired, Kareem sent me a wooden box with his signature burned into the top of it. And I don't know if you know this, but when he played, he was the first player to have a signature shoe.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was the green, red, and white Bucks colors by Adidas.
Oh, cool.
And so I opened the box, and there's a pair of those shoes in my size. He had them made for me, so that's a very prized possession that I have. And
that's really cool.
Wow. Yeah, wonderful guy. I've enjoyed meeting him, and so yeah, that's enough of that. But I can't compete with the Legos, but
No, I think you've got us beat. Don't worry.
No.
Don't worry.
that's not my intention. But the Legos are cool. But if I had them, I would step on them. So that
Yeah. Well, that's why we keep them on before. But okay, so you've told us about your collections, but you might remember this from last year. Whenever we have a guest on, we have a little recurring. We like it to be recurring, and it's going to recur now. It's a segment, where we it's a freely decided kind of thing. And last year, as I was listening back when you did this with Riley, it was maybe going to be called Paschke's Putter, because like you, like me, you're a golfer, and it ended up being Paschke's Passport, and it's a recent place or trip you've been on, and it could be golf related, that you'd like to tell us about. So it's recurring. The segment is officially recurring. I'm making it recur right now, but tell us what you've been up to.
Well, when was I last with you?
It was about this time last year or before the season. So maybe September or October.
I think I went to last year. I went on a cruise to Canada and New England. That was fun.
I don't remember hearing about that. So.
Yeah, that was cool. I enjoyed that. Golf related, I have to say last Friday was probably my favorite since we talked last. I was able to play in the Bucks Foundation outing, and they held it at the Irish course at Whistling Straits.
Oh, cool.
I hadn't been there, and I was overmatched times 10 on that course, but it was very enjoyable. And so that was good. That was probably my best golf experience of the year. Someone sent me a picture today of me in this massive sand trap with, mini mountains behind me and Lake Michigan in the background. And so it kind of sums up my entire golfing life.
Hey, that's where I'd be too. I mean, like I'm trying to scratch like a 15 handicap right now. So
I'm way more than that, but
yeah, maybe I'm giving myself too much credit.
I keep trying.
Yeah, who were you partnered up with? Like at this?
No, I played with. Well, you're going to enjoy this. I played with two people: general manager Ann Brown and Adam from Channel 58. Ann is the vice president and general manager.
Okay.
And I hope I'm not talking out of school, but you guys are too young to remember this name. But her father is Andy Messersmith.
That sounds kind of familiar.
He pitched in the major leagues for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah. He's my age, but he pitched for the Yankees, pitched for a lot of teams. And I thought that was interesting. So I enjoyed meeting Ann and Adam. And then the gentleman who does the Feldco commercials was in our group.
What?
Yeah.
Like
I said, you look familiar to me. Feldco? And he goes, Feldco.
Look this guy up. All I'm thinking is just their jingle.
It's a family business. He lives in Chicago. So, it was a wonderful day. I had a wonderful time with them. It was great.
You're right. I'm looking at it. His name is Dave Cook. I just Googled Feldco, and one of the first results, Feldco commercial guy. So he's down here in Chicago where I live. Okay.
Yeah,
and Jackson. Jackson's just north of Chicago.
Right.
Is he any good? He's a good golfer?
We were all about the same, but they were all better than me.
Is this like, did they do a scramble or anything for this?
Yeah,
or
we played a scramble. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so how many groups are there like that go out for this event?
Oh, I don't know. That's a great question.
Like did anyone win? What were they winning, if anything?
I don't know if I was around for that or not. I know we did not, so I wasn't paying particular attention. Yeah. I was visiting, afterwards I visited with some of the former players that were there, Desmond Mason and who else stopped by? A few of them. So it was great, but that's always a nice outing. The Bucks do a great job with that and raising money for, underserved portions of our community, which is always a good thing. So
Jim,
that was a fun day.
Speaking of Desmond Mason, you might be interested to know, we brought on a new writer this offseason who lives in Poland. Yeah. His name is David, and he has for a very long time now, going back to, I would say, the early 2000s or so, he's run the Bucks. It's like bucks.pl, like the Polish domain name, just a fan site over there for the Bucks. And there's a very small community, but active community of Bucks fans over there. And his favorite player, and the player who really got him into the Bucks, was Desmond Mason. And he's written one of his first pieces for us. It was a very, really interesting article about how his fandom for the Bucks kind of started with watching Desmond Mason play when he was in college on those teams in the early 2000s. I mean, I was a big Desmond Mason fan too. I remember watching him a lot. Like, he was one of the coolest players. I mean, one of the best dunkers I'd ever seen. So
the cowboy.
Yeah. I'm glad he's still around. I remember he did, like, he's an artist now, right? He
a very accomplished artist. Yes.
Yeah. I remember he did he did one of the Bucks hat designs a number of years ago. That was pretty cool. So
yeah, he does some really cool work. Very creative, and I was catching up with him on some of his art pieces, and I'm also a proud owner of one of his works. So, it's I've always paid a lot of attention to what Des is doing. I was at his first art show here in Milwaukee, and then we attended another one of his art shows in Las Vegas during Summer League one year. So he's very prolific, and he does really, really great work.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy. That's great that he's still around. I'm glad you got the chance to talk to him. But yeah. Well, Jim, hey, thanks for joining us. It's always a lot of fun to catch up with you and talk hoops and life and everything. So
I appreciate it. It's my pleasure. And like I said at the beginning, I don't know what's going on with this team, but I hope.
Are you kidding? Are you kidding? That's like, this was so insightful. Like Jim's telling us off there, like, oh boy, I don't know who's on the roster and everything like that. Come on, man. You know exactly what you're talking about.
The product of being at practice every day and feeling like I'm 100 miles away every day now. So
you're a lot closer than some people who claim they are right in the action. Let me tell you that.
Perhaps. I do enjoy watching on television, though. I never got to do that.
Join the rest of us, plebes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh my gosh.
Well, Jackson, you want?
Yep. Sorry about that. So again, Jim, thank you so much for hopping on. This will hopefully be posted today, if not tomorrow. But thank you to everyone who watched and or listened. If you were listening on Spotify, want to head on over to YouTube to watch it later, be our guest. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Blue Sky. Make sure, obviously, head on over to the sites, brewhoop.com, to catch our latest pieces. And our first game coverage is coming up Monday, October 6th, game one of the preseason against the Miami Heat. So make sure to be on the lookout for that. It's been really fun having you on, Jim. And again, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure. I will be sure and travel so the passport can be talked about in the future.
We'll see what you got for us next year this time.
Yeah,
I'd like to come back.
I have a few lined up.
Good. Cool.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Jim at your local airport.
Have a great season.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Jim.
Thanks.